Hi, everybody. Welcome to our team's ethical audit on Lululemon. Our team is made up of Carson Jones, Brady Owens, Benton Prock, and myself, Lauren Rasmussen. Our task was to create an in-depth ethical audit on Lululemon and provide recommendations using this audit to implement an ethical culture. So we wanted to give an athleisure industry overview before we started diving in. So here's kind of a brief history of the athleisure movement. It started in the late 19th century, where people had different categories of clothes for on the street, restaurants, the theater, and different genres until 1892, when the rubber company started manufacturing tennis shoes. And that is the same point in time when intramural sports became more popular in American colleges, and young people started wearing tennis shoes and athleisure wear inside of classrooms as well. Then come the late 20th century, where Lululemon was founded in Vancouver, Canada, and then Lululemon shortly later expanded to America. In the early 21st century, the term athleisure became popularized by the New York fashion industry, and other companies were making athletic gear, but Lululemon set itself apart by focusing on technical apparel, as well as paying attention to women's needs. Now, this cultural shift was really necessary because people were more gym memberships and healthy foods, as well as Silicon Valley started encouraging their people to wear whatever made them feel comfortable to the workspace. So that brings us to the athleisure industry today. There's a lot of competition, and all these athleisure brands are marketed as a lifestyle. But Lululemon was the first to really market as a lifestyle, which allowed for an emergence of niche brands such as Alo Yoga, Athleta, Outdoor Voices, and all these brands are investing in their social consciousness as well.
So moving forward, there's a couple industry ethical issues we wanted to do some research on, just to kind of understand where Lululemon was operating in the space that the athleisure industry is at right now. First one is body inclusivity. This is a big problem for athleisure because most athleisure brands do not use plus size models for their clothing. As you can see in the picture here, this is an advertisement for some athleisure clothing. None of those models pictured are larger than a very normal sized human. They're very fit. And while there's been a push to be using more plus size modeling to promote inclusivity, it's still a large issue for the athleisure industry as a whole. Lululemon has also openly announced that their clothing is not for everyone. We'll go into more detail as to what that looks like in the steps that got us there. But as you can see in the quote, they recognize that the brand isn't for everyone and that fitness comes in all shapes and sizes. However, they've built theirs with this kind of premium looking quality life, very fit model in mind. So the next issue we're going to go into is sustainability, which is another big issue for the athleisure industry as a whole, but also for the garment industry. The athleisure industry is famous for making its moisture wicking clothing, perfect for comfort and for working out. But unfortunately, most of these clothes are made with polyester and other synthetic materials. This is what gives it that quality moisture wicking feel. Because of how fine these strands of polyester are, when these clothes are washed, micrometers thick strands of this polyester, as you can see in the quote, 10 micrometers, which is very small, finer than a strand of hair, is actually washed out in the wash and taken to our waterways. Unfortunately, this is the same plastic that's ending up in our oceans and eaten by fish and other aquatic animals. Unfortunately, it can't be digested, and this plastic is building up in the stomachs of animals that are in our waterways and our environment. So the third issue that we'll go into is worker rights. Worker rights is a big issue for a lot of companies that outsource, but specifically the garment industry has been under fire recently after the Rana Plaza garment factory collapse. This was a garment factory that created clothes for a lot of famous brands in the athleisure industry. And this loss of 1,000 workers and injuring up to 2,500 kind of brought the garment industry into light. So after that, the International Labor Organization has called for widespread change in regards to international worker rights. However, it's still not great, and there's still a lot of issues regarding worker rights. The issue of outsourcing is very prevalent in athleisure as companies can access cheaper labor and cheaper materials, but they run the risk of ethical issues because these companies are not in direct control of those production facilities and how those production facilities are ran. There's been accounts of women being slapped verbally and physically abused in these factories, which we'll go into more detail later. But these are just three of the main industry ethical issues that Lululemon is operating in.
Yeah, thank you, Matt, for some background on the athleisure industry. So now we can dive into Lululemon specifically. And to kick off the company overview, we can look at Lululemon's mission statement and core values. Lululemon does not have an official company mission statement. Rather, they have a manifesto. And you've probably seen this inside their stores, on their bags, or on the walls. And essentially, it is just a collection of bold statements that Lululemon believes are motivational and can start real conversations and improvement towards everyone. Moving on to their core values, you can see that they have 6. And in summary, these core values represent a dedication to quality and product service and customer service. And they represent a constant improvement in performance and also a work-life balance of fun, mental health, and improvement. Moving on, we can go to Lululemon's ethical guidelines. Lululemon has several documents drafted over time to reflect their ethical standards inside of their business. Some of the major ones are the Global Code of Business Conduct and Ethics, and this shows Lululemon's dedication to integrity within the workplace. It provides their desire to comply with all laws and prevent corruption, and also describes their zero tolerance policy that prevents discrimination, harassment, extensive labor, and any other unethical treatment of stakeholders. It also provides ways where employees can report misconduct using hotlines. Next, we have the Vendor Code of Ethics, and this is a statement that makes all partners and vendors be subject to that zero tolerance policy mentioned above, or Lululemon will revoke conducting business with them. Next, we have the Climate and Energy Guidelines, and this lists Lululemon's goal for sustainability and climate change. Currently, Lululemon has committed to reducing the greenhouse gas emissions by 60% by 2030 in all of its supply chains, and it's also committed to recycle 90% of the materials used. And then we also have employee training with ethical course classes that, when signed up, all employees must go through. We have integrity hotlines where you can report anonymously misconduct. And finally, we have the Internal Audit Committee, and that's just a branch dedicated to random inspections of ethical culture throughout all their retail stores and vendors. Next, we have ethical scandals. And despite having such a strong ethical framework, Lululemon does have several scandals. And in 2019, a scandal over women's rights and labor occurred after a vendor in Bangladesh, the Young One factory, was discovered to be operating a factory filled with young women who were even around the ages of 15 years old, and they worked long hours and suffered verbal abuse and physical abuse with unlivable wages. In 2013, Lululemon experienced a scandal over obesity discrimination. Finally, in 2017, a former Lululemon employee, Elizabeth Licorice, published an article about the cult environment of Lululemon. She described people being there as being obsessed with fitness and shaming other employees for, not eating healthy or having a candy bar every now and then, or missing a group kickboxing session. And these issues are still reported today by employees.
So within the company, Lululemon has a code of conduct that tells across the board their ethical standards and expectations. Yet they seem to struggle in terms of implementing the code into practice. Time and time again, there are examples of ethical issues that are addressed within the code of conduct. Lulu's pay structure is interesting in that employees are paid through a group commission at each site. This strategy was put into place to ease internal competitiveness between colleagues. The main benefit employees receive is that they're reimbursed for workout classes that they take. In terms of workplace environment, Lulu strives to promote a positive workplace environment through the 5 categories listed in the slide. In terms of discrimination and due process, Lululemon wants all employees and partners to comply with any and all laws and regulations. Furthermore, they have a process for employees to report any ethical concerns that they may have, called the integrity line. Now, when it comes to personal and professional growth, Lululemon provides personal growth through the freedom they give to associates. To grow professionally, though, employees must buy into the highly intense, die-hard attitude encouraged by management.
So in order to understand best how Lululemon impacts its external environments, it's important to look at the code of ethics, both global and vendor, their environmental protection, community responsibility, their philanthropic efforts, and their product social responsibility. And the 2 I really want to highlight here are the community responsibility and philanthropy. So first, when it comes to the community, Lululemon really contributes to society by offering various events for the community, such as yoga classes and run clubs. And they really emphasize how important it is to abide by all local and international laws. However, when you look at the different beatings of workers in Bangladesh, it really makes me doubt if their intentions are actually turning into quality action. And next, looking at their philanthropic efforts, they have donated to organizations such as Peace on Purpose, Vinyasa Yoga for Youth, and Here to Be. But what's common among all the organizations they donate to is the fact that they are all organizations centered around yoga and meditation. And so there's not really a wide variety of efforts that they donate to. And when reading about their donation efforts, it kind of seems like an afterthought for the company. So looking at the ABEA qualifications, specifically at the first point, the executive's commitment to ethics, as a team, we believe that they do not meet this category. A couple CEOs have had to resign over ethical issues. Most recently, Laurent Potvin was kind of charged with nepotistic behavior, and in a quote released by the company, he simply fell short of ethical standards, and that's why he had to resign. And overall, there's very little public communication from executives on ethical issues. No interviews, statements, nothing like that. And so we don't believe they met this qualification. Point number 2, as previously explained by Carson, there is a very extensive and exhaustive code of ethics, both both the global code of ethics and the vendor code of ethics, which touch on a significant amount of issues that employees may face. But what is really impressive from these codes of ethics is that they really place a high expectation of integrity from their employees, and they provide a lot of different resources for employees to be able to use to report ethical misconduct through what they call people and culture partners, the integrity line, and the internal audit committee. And whether they're reporting a misconduct or simply coming to consult advice on how to handle a situation, there's a lot of different resources employees can use to be able to do that. And so that's why we believe strongly that they meet both qualification 2 and 3.
Lululemon has in-depth information such as books and DVDs that they provide to employees to ensure that each employee understands what Lulu expects out of them. Furthermore, Lululemon hired a third-party internal auditing team that will show up randomly on site to be sure that employees and partners are maintaining Lulu's ethical standards. Yet, they lack public surveys addressing their ethical performance. Employees are required to read and sign Lulu's code of conduct on an annual basis. Given that information, the team decided that in terms of understanding ethical standards, Lululemon met the standard with a score of 5. The Integrity Line, a program that allows employees to anonymously express ethical concerns within the organization, has proven effective and efficient throughout the entirety of the company. Given that, the team decided that Lululemon met the standard when it comes to policies to address ethical concerns. Lululemon provides employees with a generic set of questions that they should ask themselves in ethical dilemmas, yet they do not provide specific material displaying their business ethics standards in action. Given that, we decided that Lululemon did not meet the standard of a narrative of business ethics in action.
And to highlight the 7th ABA analysis, which is high quality product, service, and operations, we realized that Lululemon wants to be more than an athletic apparel company. They want their stores to be a community hub where people can seek encouragement and accountability in meeting their goals. Their employees are experts on both physical and mental health, and they offer a lot of classes and run clubs to have advice and encouragement. However, we also realized that Lululemon is committed to being a global leader inside of sustainability. And in analyzing their climate guidelines, we realized that they don't really have a tangible set of actions to improve under these. It's really just kind of like a statement or a goal that they have, and really no step-by-step process that they have in meeting these. And for that reason, we said that they did meet this qualification. However, we gave them a score of 6, as we would like it to be a little bit more tangible. The ABA analysis 8 was over a respectful work environment. And inside the Global Code of Ethics and Business Conduct, Lululemon voiced their desire to empower employees and pretty much reduce discrimination. And this is mainly done through their zero tolerance policy. However, these scandals have still surfaced time and time and again, and although Lululemon has a great framework for ethics, however, they've still not been successful, and for that reason, we gave them a score of 4 and said that they did not meet the standard. Finally, number 8 highlighted Lululemon's philanthropic culture. Lululemon is very average inside of their philanthropic efforts. Because of their averageness in this area, we said that they did meet this area, but gave them a low score of 5.
On the corporate social responsibility pyramid, Lululemon definitely meets both the economic and legal section. And even their code of ethics would make one think that they're ethical. But this isn't the case in practicality. Many stakeholders would claim that there has not been acceptable behavior within Lululemon, and the definition of on the ethical level is the responsibility is to follow standards of acceptable behavior as judged by stakeholders.
Lululemon is certainly moral and legalistic, and after having to respond to a variety of ethical issues to impress stakeholders, we would argue that they do qualify the responsive category as well. So the question becomes whether or not they're emerging ethical or ethical. And their corporate material really do suggest that there is an overt effort from managers and from executives to create a more ethical culture. However, when it comes to different stories about fat shaming and questionable interview practices and a variety of other problems that we've discussed already, it's clear that this effort to create a more ethical culture has not sufficient an emerging ethical company.
Awesome. So we wanted to give our overall recommendations and conclusions to the Lululemon executives so they could create a better company. The first of which being converting the compliance-based culture to one that is more values-based. Lululemon is currently more concerned with the following rules and laws which aren't working out given the plethora of ethical issues and dilemmas they're facing. So Lululemon should strive for their value propositions to be infused into all aspects of ethical decision-making and employee empowerment.
Ethical behavior starts at the top. Given that, this is why it is critical to have someone leading this effort at the top. Our team decided that it would be smart for Lululemon to implement a chief ethics officer. He or she would use both referent and legitimate power in enacting change.
And we quickly realized that Lululemon didn't really have a carrot approach to their ethical behavior. They really only had a stake, and this was mainly done through either revoking business or fines, for example. And because of this, we wanted to reward ethical behavior through compensation. And because of this, we realized that vendor rewards and bonuses for employees would actually encourage ethical behavior across all aspects of the value of the supply chain, and would just add another aspect for improving ethical culture as a whole.
Yeah, thanks, Carson. And the fourth and final recommendation the team thinks that Lululemon should implement moving forward is to perform consistent ethical audits. In the past, ethical audits have been completed at the retail level through that random third-party audit. However, we believe that corporate as well as retail ethical audits from a third party paired with quarterly vendor ethics audits to make sure that their overseas suppliers are still complying with their ethics and their code of standards. We recommend that these consistent ethical audits are done to help Lululemon follow through on their code of ethics that they have set forward. If all of these recommendations are put into place, the team believes that Lululemon will achieve the ethical level of a company on the SCED pyramid. Thank you so much for listening. We hope that the team has highlighted some of the ethical issues faced by Lululemon and its industry, addressed where Lululemon is currently, and given the recommendations that will hopefully help Lululemon make these changes and achieve the ethical company that we believe it could be in the future. Thank you so much.